Stuart Bell. Welcome to the Bookmore Show.
The Bookmore Show. Was that copyrighted?
Probably not. Probably not.
We have a connection.
So, it's very interesting because I've been reading the Robert Cialdini's new book called
Presuasion.
Pre-suasion, yes. And here's the thing. I've always suspected, and I've talked about how the value of having somebody ask for a book that implies that they are desirous of the outcome that the book promises. And I've used example all the time of the adult acne cure as an example, or a title of a book that somebody is really, that's what they want. We've talked on podcasts before about this idea that the title of your book is really best if it conveys what your prospect really wants. Like if by having and holding this book that they're essentially, claiming that benefit for themselves. And I talk about Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace as the great example, right? If somebody is in turmoil financially, that's stressful, and there's a lot of upheaval in their life and worry and all these negative feelings. And you could just imagine somebody holding that book and getting this sense of peace, because it's as if they've been thrown a life ring, a life jacket that they can put this on, and they're going to be on their way to that sense of financial peace. And the same thing when somebody asks for the adult acne cure. Now, what I learned from Robert Cialdini's book, Pre-suasion, is the documented kind of experimental case for why these things happen. And Robert, for people who don't know, wrote the seminal book on social psychology called Influence about 30 years ago. And, I have to say, like any marketer that you know by name, if you were to ask them their most influential books, Influence is definitely on the list, because Robert spent a lot of years documenting what he calls the 6 weapons of influence. And, the book was written as a way of helping equip people to recognize when influence is being applied to them, so that they understand why they have these feelings that they're compelled to take action to buy something that they may not want, because
can't help themselves.
Yeah, the weapons are so powerful. They work regardless of whether they're invited or not. And so being able to recognize them, that was his hope, that they would that we would be able to defend ourselves against them. But like Gary Vaynerchuk says, marketers ruin everything. And they, of course, claimed all of this as a way to understand how influence really works. And it's been, a tremendous book. And I've I don't know how many times I've read that book. I know every single example in it. I've used every single one of the 6 weapons of influence, which he, just to give kind of the 2-minute version of it, and realize that a 90-minute book, is really ticking a lot of these influence boxes right away. That, one of the one of the influence factors that he talks about is authority. And so there's no greater authority icon in our society than being the author of a book, right? Does he know the topic? Well, he wrote the book on it. I mean, we're so conditioned. Yeah, we're so conditioned that if it's in a book, it's credible and this guy is an authority, right? There's reciprocity, which is one of the things that he talks about. If I do something for you, if I do you a favor, you owe me a favor. That's the way society works, right? So if I give you something of value, then I have that sets off this sense of you needing to balance the books here, right? So when you start a relationship with a prospect by giving them a book, you've given them a gift, you've given them advice, you've given them information, and that's really it sets off this chain of events that all of a sudden everything is tipped in your favor because you're giving before getting. You're giving something to somebody, and so we use all the other elements in this too, and that one of them is social proof, where we show and share examples or what other people are doing and how we've been able to help other people with this. We use liking, where the fact that you give somebody something and when they ask for it, we're engaging in a dialogue, that we're acting and sort of being in relationship with somebody, that triggers people to like us. And that's we'd love to do business with people that we like. So there's all of those things that are kind of working in our favor. So I would highly recommend first that people read that book, Influence. And there's another example of a great book title. But what Robert has done now 30 years later has written a book about what he calls the pre-suaders. And this is pretty fascinating because he really identified, well, why do these influence practices and these influence moments really work when we deploy them? And so often it's just what happens right before the influence moment that he calls it. And so I've read the book 3 times now, and I'm still going back and highlighting and really letting the examples sink in because they're so phenomenal that they're almost unreal, right? So I have to go back and continue to really grasp what they mean. But I'll give you a couple of examples. So in setting the stage for something, we find that in one of the experiments they did in a wine store, and by the way, when I was in Toronto, I got to catch up with Gary Vaynerchuk. I hadn't seen him in a while, but he was speaking at an event where I was in Toronto, so we got to spend about an hour together. And I was sharing with him this example, and he said, that makes total sense. But they went into a wine store, a wine retailer, and when they played French music in the background, just no mention of it, no setup for it. They just walk in and there's French music playing, that the sales of French wine went up disproportionately. When they played German music, the sales of German wine went up disproportionately. And so you start to see that just what's setting that tone is affecting on a subconscious level to kind of set the stage for something, And so
and that's the thing, isn't it? The subconscious triggers, which is so ingrained in the rest of every other social interaction in society, to be able to understand what those are and use them for good and just orchestrate the process that little bit more to set them up. It's almost like a magic trick.
Yes, absolutely. And then, they would do another experiment where if you've ever been, I don't know if they do this in London or the UK, where they're in the mall or on the street. Sometimes there will be survey takers where they'll come up with their clipboard and they'll ask, if you have a couple of minutes to take part in a survey. Well, they did that, and they would go up with that standard approach. Hey, do you have a couple of minutes for a survey? And they would get 29% of the people who they approached to do the survey. Then they switched their approach to, instead of leading with the survey, they would go up to people and just say, hi, do you consider yourself a helpful person? And after people paused and said yes, then they would ask them about the survey, and 77% of the people that they approached would take the survey. So
that's my favorite example, because it's so easy for people to understand the difference in just the small approach change, and absolutely, the layer after layer of social commitment and predefined pattern and persuasion that sets up all of that success, and such an easy change for people to make.
Yeah,
it's I think one of my favorite examples in the book.
Yeah. Well, that's that's the perfect precursor to commitment and consistency, which was another one of the influence factors that Robert talks about. That we feel this internal drive to act consistently with the commitments that we've made. So if we say we're a helpful person, and then immediately the first time we're presented with an opportunity to be helpful, we say no, we've completely discounted what we just said. Yeah. And that's what I think is happening with a book. That when somebody writes a book like this, that we are, especially when you've got a title that indicates that you're moving towards something, right? When we say the adult acne cure, that the only people who are going to want a book like that are people who are seeking that benefit. So when somebody asks for a book like that, and then we immediately ask them in a short personal email, hi, Stuart, welcome aboard. How often do you get breakouts? That's really a simple way to engage with people. And so I was so encouraged to see kind of the evidence, documented experimental evidence to back up why books are so important. Why this is really why it works so well. And I think it's just it just sets the stage so well. It's like once somebody is kind of like you get somebody's attention first by them asking for the book, you set the frame on how this is going to go. And then what we say in the book itself can really set the tone for the way people experience the rest of the journey.
Yeah, and I think understanding that it is a journey, that the job of work of the book itself is to help identify those invisible prospects, and then there's the added power of setting the context for the follow-up afterwards.
Yes.
And then staging that, understanding that it's one step in the process. It's not the be-all and end-all.
Right.
In the context that we're talking about, we're not really that interested in book sales as such. We're not. We're much more interested in engaging an audience that then can lead towards an outcome that's beneficial to them. And
it's the equivalent of, making sure that somebody is interested in something. If somebody asks for a book called Financial Peace, there's a good chance that they are seeking financial peace. So that sets the tone for how we communicate with them. If they ask for, a book called Return on Safety, turning workplace safety into a competitive advantage and bottom line profit, that you can go that they're looking to take a different approach to workplace safety. So you start the conversation from a position of I'm already interested in this.
And that's I've heard you talk about it before, both here and on other podcasts, that frame of writing an email or writing a book with the mindset of, imagine that the perfect prospect, the gold star prospect, was sat in front of you and you just having a conversation.
Yes.
Thinking about it in that helps all of this, because it really narrows down the conversation. You know what you're trying to achieve. You know how specifically you can help them. And it just makes every stage before that much more straightforward and easy to bring together, much easier to create. And then layer on top of it some of the persuasion elements that kind of amplify that message and really help the people that you can help the most identify themselves and set in a framework. I can remember going to Tony Robbins, the 3-day event. The name was
UPW, Unlimited Power Weekend.
Thank you. Perfect. So about 15 years ago now in London, and I don't know whether they're still doing it. I guess they are, the Firewalk. So on the first evening is the Firewalk, and I can remember, so this is in London, so perhaps a slightly more conservative crowd 15 years ago, at least, compared with an American crowd maybe. But being sat in the room, ready for the Friday night, knowing that the Firewalk was coming up, at the beginning of the event, there's lots of kind of standing up and making some noises and physical contact with other people there, which again in the UK might not be the most comfortable thing to do. But I can remember saying to myself, I know in about 7 hours' time I'm going to be walking over some hot coals, so I'm just going to suspend any disbelief I've got at the moment. I'm going to go all in, because I don't want to be the one there trying to be clever, not listening to what's being said, and then ended up with burnt feet. So that's as a setup. And I can actually remember having that conversation with myself slightly. So that as a setup has the kind of persuasion elements for the rest of the weekend, where that kind of suspension of disbelief and the willingness to engage with what's going on is really the power of the rest of the event. As a lot of people would look at the Firewalk as it's trying to achieve one thing like breaking boundaries or barriers, but really the setup, the persuasion element of it was really pretty powerful.
I agree. And so, now you look at that, and with these eyes that, I just think that it sets the tone, and even the imagery that, seems so simple can make a difference. One of the experiments they did in the book was they took a retail furniture website, and they overlaid in the background a picture of clouds on the background of the web page. And when they did that, inquiries and sales of the comfort featured furniture and beds was higher. And when they overlaid in the background on the same web page, instead of the clouds, coins, the sales and inquiries of the economy, the least expensive things went up. And so, it's like we often think that, that can't be me. That wouldn't apply. You know what I mean? But when you start to see that
everyone else would fall for that.
Everyone else would fall for that. But now you start to see like the actual, the actual imagery makes such a difference, and I think that we've stumbled on, even just from an authority standpoint, saying to people on the back of a book, here's what to do next. Having those words of just setting that tone where that imprint is made before they're ever asked to do anything, that or invited to do anything, that really sets the stage that you're an authority. What you're taking a leadership role for people, and that kind of thing is just so powerful.
I think people naturally
I'm
tend
thrilled.
towards
I couldn't be any more thrilled about the support that now I have, like the real scientific kind of understanding of why the things we've been doing have worked so well.
It adds an extra credibility dimension to it as well, doesn't it? It's anecdotally we know it works because there's case after case, but for almost an independent study to back it up with even more examples. And so I can remember just on the back cover, the telling people what to do next part. I think it was on one of the More Cheese Less Whiskers podcasts with Jamie Smart a couple of weeks ago. He was saying that or was it Jamie? It might have been Joel. Anyway, someone was saying that on their site they'd kind of really gone overboard almost in their specifically here's what you need to do next in their communications, and they'd seen a dramatic difference in uptake just because people's kind of innate desire to take the path of least resistance, to want to have a clear path of what's next. As insiders, as people behind the scene, it might be easy to assume that, well, obviously they should do this next. That makes perfect sense. But to actually explicitly tell someone, it's like the instructions that you get on fairground rides, like at Disney or a theme park. Sort of as people get closer and closer to the front of the ride, there's all of the little signs saying, "Now do this, now go there. This is what you'll experience next."
Right.
Sowing those seeds at every stage, and on the books to have that on the back cover, which is the place that the majority of people will look as they're thumbing through it, and then have the content leading towards those exact same outcomes.
Yeah,
really spelling it out for people, just far more effective.
Yeah, agreed.
And easy for people to create. I mean, it's we see it time and time again. People come and say, "I've got 5 chapters in, and I'm sort of driven myself into a hole of where we're going with this." But to have that very starting with the end in mind, knowing the type of the single target market, the type of people who you want to engage, what the outcome is, what you want them to do next, and then almost just dot to dot filling in the blanks from the front cover to the back cover. That reminds people.
Just the fact that I think if we can get as an outcome for listening to this episode, the thought that we're setting the stage for somebody, if we can encourage the idea of thinking through the book title as being the benefit that somebody is going to want, to get them thinking the thought that that will be the most fertile ground to plant the next seed of here's what to do next, to start that relationship. And that's why, when we look at the way we use the 90-minute book as an example, even the title, the 90-minute book, is enough that, we're breaking down the barriers of people thinking that writing a book takes months and months and months and lots of hard work, and it almost sounds unbelievable that you could create a book in 90 minutes, enough so that when we do present that in Facebook ads, in online, that we get 60 to 70% of the people that come to the page to leave their name and their email address to get the book. Probably many of the people listening to this right now have gone through that process because they saw this book and it at some level was in the back of their mind that they would like to write a book, and to start a conversation with, well, here's how to do it in 90 minutes. That's a conversation worth starting,
Yeah. And it's not too clever. It does what it says on the tin. It helps people self-select as an engaged audience. There does seem to be a bit of a move recently of trying to come up with clever one-word titles. I think a lot of what you see on Amazon is kind of condensed down to that, but it is a very different job that it's trying to do. The purpose of doing this is with a specific outcome of engaging customers or engaging people in the tribe. That's a different job of work on a title that might be clever and eye-catching.
That I'll use Frank Kern as an example, is a good friend. We've had a lot of conversations about this, about the 90-minute book and about this approach to small books. And Frank almost exclusively uses these small books as a lead generator now. You see all over Facebook right now is the book, How to Get High-Paying Consulting Clients, even if nobody's ever heard of you. Now,
right.
He's answering the question. He's, posing something that anybody who asks for a book like that is implicitly interested in. How do I get high-paying clients? And overcoming that thing but people have never heard of me. Because people look at that. I often get that a lot, that people say, well, it's easy for you guys. People know who you are, or,
right.
all these things. But, I look at it and I point to our email mastery experience in Success Magazine that, the majority of those people have no idea who I am. But they were very interested in hearing about an amazing 9-word email that revives dead leads. And sharing that whole process with them, that was, enough to start the conversation and then offer the rest of the, the next step in the process of getting the email mastery book. And that, it sets the tone. And I've said it again and again and again, that the book is the gateway. It's like a portal into a relationship. Somebody asks for the book. That's what gives you the opportunity now to ask them and say, hey, welcome aboard. What business are you in? That's the message that we send to the email mastery people, and always taking this incremental approach where we can say, what business are you in? And then no matter what they reply, the version of the response is somewhere in some kind of acknowledgement of what business they were in, and then asking them, have you tried a 9-word email yet? And then when they say they either have or have not, to be able to invite them onto a call where we can say, hey, I'm getting together with some people on Thursday to brainstorm some 9-word emails and subject lines. Would you like to join us? So, you look at all of those things. I mean, we've used successfully this book model in so many different industries. I mean, I would say there's very little overlap in, of all of the books that we've done, hundreds of books, there's probably hundreds of different industries that we've been able to help people
and
with,
even in the same industry, there's the approaches that people have got, or the audience that they're trying to engage, or the people that they can best serve is so unique to each individual person. No two books are the same, even if they're loosely in the same genre or same industry.
Yeah.
And that's the benefit of the specificity. You can really dial in, pick who it is that's your perfect customer, and how you can best serve them and engage them. And a small book that answers that question absolutely comprehensively, knowing that it's the gateway, it's the first step in the conversation, and the whole aim is to engage people, is absolutely the most effective way to get something out there that blows everything else out of the water in terms of response rate, especially when you look at the influence elements of kind of authority and reciprocity, and the persuasion elements of this is the beginning of a conversation that makes perfect sense to this audience. Yeah.
And so I think that just as a guiding thought for as people are brainstorming and thinking about their book title, that the best title kind of path is one that talks about the destination more than the journey, that it talks about where they're going to land. If somebody is in financial turmoil and they're promised financial peace, that's really a great thing. If somebody is, an entrepreneur that's working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they see a book called The 4-Hour Work Week, that sounds like less than what they're working right now. And that would be a wonderful benefit to have. If somebody's thinking about, getting writing a book, and they see a title, The 90-Minute Book, that's worth investigating,
Yeah.
So that's what I would encourage people is to think about the destination. What's the end result? The adult acne cure. That's so.
So all she uses really highlights the benefits to them rather than the work involved.
Yes.
It's not the 10-minute a day skincare regime. It's the adult acne cure.
That's exactly right. Yes, that's exactly right. And it's not about the author. I think that's
right.
part of the thing is that one of the mistakes that people make often is shining the light on themselves, and making
which goes
it
back to about you. It's far too easy to see, which is ideally encapsulated in the email mastery example.
Yes. Uh-huh.
It was an audience that didn't necessarily know you, but the subject, the results, the benefits.
Everybody's got unconverted leads. Why not start with the baseline, right? Why not start where everybody is and then be able to advance on that foundation, And we've been doing this with high-end financial advisors, offering a 2016 Social Security benefits guide, which no matter what level people are at when they get to retirement, Social Security is going to form some amount of their overall financial picture, and everybody is interested in how that is going to work for them specifically, and it's the baseline now to start the conversation. And you've got that one sliver of how Social Security fits into your overall financial picture. So it's just getting a foundation to start a conversation.
Yeah, we talk about use the example of being at a party, and you wouldn't necessarily be the person that was in the corner trying to share everything to everyone and telling them how they're doing it wrong, but sharing one piece of useful advice that someone has kind of raised a question about to begin with is really seen as quite valuable and might start a conversation afterwards.
It really does.
Fantastic.
What have we learned today?
So I think, as you say, the main thing that people should really take away is that the titles focus on the benefits of the titles, because that leads into the rest of the conversation. It sets people thinking on the right path towards, I've identified myself because I'm engaged in this particular subject, and then leading towards the outcome, leading towards the here's what to do next, is the information that backs that up in a useful way that starts the relationship. But the title is the thing that catches the attention in the first place.
That's it. I love it.
Fantastic.
I can't wait to see what people come up with title-wise. I hope this spurs like that, maybe makes that all click together, that people have an understanding of what the actual role of the title of their book in setting the stage for the grander, the grander experience or journey that we're going to have with somebody.
Yeah, it's in the rest of the book. I think there's a comment section on the website, so head over to 90minutebooks.com/podcast, and this is episode 17. So feel free to leave some comments in there. We'll feed back, or if anyone wants to reach out to us and ask some more specific questions, then just shoot a note to support at 90 Minute Books, and we'll more than happy to feedback on people's ideas. And as I say, exciting to see what comes next.
Love it.
Okay. Thanks, Dean.
Awesome.
Catch you next time.
Thanks, Stuart. Yep.